Hey everybody, welcome to the T3 Fit Scoliosis podcast. On today's episode, we're doing it a little bit differently. You can see that I am sitting here with Emily, my friend, and who happens to have a spinal fusion. Emily and I have known each other for probably 3 years.
3 years.
3 years, and we've been working together as well. She is here to tell us her story of having scoliosis and a spinal fusion, how it started, where she is, and how life is like now. So Emily, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When did your scoliosis journey start?
So back when I was I think in high school,
Okay.
they had detected that I had curvature of the spine because, as everyone has in school, that's part of like the
toe touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was when they realized I had it, but it wasn't severe at that point.
Okay.
Then I went through a growth spurt, and I was playing field hockey in high school. So my mom, I would tell her like, "Oh, my back hurts," and she's like, "You're doing sports, whatever." And it didn't kind of come together that I had gone through a growth spurt at the same time.
Okay.
And so my curves had basically like significantly increased at that point.
Okay.
Like to like 40s, 50s.
Do you remember what they were at the beginning?
I know it was very minimal. It was probably, if I had to guess, it was probably more like 10, 15 level of like, it was noticeable, but not bad.
Okay.
And then by the time they had like x-rayed me and everything past that growth spurt, it was like 42 and 50 something.
Did you have to wear a brace at all?
No, never. I don't know if it was the approach of the surgeon that I had seen at the children's hospital.
Okay.
Because it had come on so rapidly in terms of it becoming an extreme S-curve, that group at least went straight to recommending surgery for me.
And okay, so how was that for you, like going from having slight discomfort to having a degree of 45, 50s? What was the emotional space that you felt that you were in at that time?
So when it was a smaller curve, I don't remember any pain or any discomfort. And then just not knowing that it was, not that we were just like running however many miles a day for practice and things like that. It was kind of like a constant pain at that point.
Okay.
And honestly, I was pretty turned off from the emotional side of it.
Okay.
All that time. So I was kind of more so just feeling like, a kid who wanted to just keep living life and just ignore this thing that feels like over here.
Did you feel that only lasted for so long and that emotional block slowly caught up with you, or did it just completely pass you by?
In what way?
So like, for instance, for me, when I was diagnosed and I had the surgery, the mental space, the emotional space that I was in was very dark because there was really no explanations and understanding of it at the time. And did you have that as well?
Yeah, and I would say in varying degrees.
Okay.
Because I think when I was younger, like it felt like this big thing in my life that I had no control over. And that was something that I just had to like cope with and deal with.
Okay. And how did you do that?
Honestly, by trying to ignore it. Like it wasn't the healthiest way to do it. But it just felt like an approach of I just need to keep living my life.
Okay. So blocking it out was the safest way for you to live as productively as you could.
Exactly.
Got it. And was there any type of physical therapy that you were given at the time?
So that's the other thing is because so much of this, I feel like I was like ignoring the emotional component, blocking it out. I know that they had me go to physical therapy. Well, actually, let me back up. Before I had the surgery, my mom had already had me and my brother like seeing a chiropractor when we were younger, and it was even before we even knew I had scoliosis.
Okay.
So that was cool and convenient and a thing, and I was very active. So I was seeing this chiropractor like all the way like leading up to my surgery, and then I know post-op they did have me do physical therapy.
Okay.
My physical therapist now, he's been trying to ask me details about what was the physical therapy experience like back then?
Okay.
What did they have you do? How long did you do it? and I'm drawing up blanks
Okay.
because I was so just like,
It was hard to be there. It was hard to be present.
yeah, like I
Okay.
don't think I was present. And so my best estimation of what it was it felt like it was a couple months post-op, maybe like 3 or
Okay.
4 months.
Okay.
And the only thing I remember them having me do is like that hand bike thing where you're doing this.
Really?
Yeah, like I know they had me do other things, but that's
Okay.
the only distinct thing that I can
Okay.
remember.
Okay. And so how old were you when you had surgery?
I was 14.
And what was it like?
What
was the support? You have your parents.
Yep. So I had my mom, and my brother at the time, and I had a friend group.
Okay.
And so I don't know how much they understood, like, what it was that I was going to go through. But I remember around the time of having the surgery, like a bunch of my friends had visited me at the hospital. Like I had a network, I had people around me.
Okay.
And then even I had the surgery like in the summer. So that next school year, like I couldn't play field hockey because, it's like perfect sport to not do after a spinal fusion. Because for anyone who doesn't know field hockey, you're pretty much bending at the hips, bending over. So yeah, I had a support network and between friends and family, but I didn't have any, well, I'm going to say in my personal life, I didn't have anybody who was going through the same experience.
Okay.
But now that we're talking about it, I am remembering too that I don't know what her role was. It was not a social worker, but somebody more on the human services side of things. She worked for the children's hospital.
Okay.
And she was maybe like a care coordinator or like something that was like end to end, like your experience of like pre and post op. So she like worked with us throughout the whole time. And there was some sort of, and again, because I just felt so like emotionally disconnected, there was a support group of other kids who were going through the surgery, like right around the same time. So they would get us together and whatnot.
What year was that?
That would have been 2007.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you were 14, had the surgery around 2007. And then what was life like after surgery?
Well, I would say the first very distinct thing, like coming home from the hospital. So they had me in the hospital for a week.
Okay.
They had me up and walking the first day after surgery.
Okay.
And obviously, I had morphine, the whole 9 yards in terms of pain meds and things like that. There was no casting or bracing or anything after. It was just the internal fusion and like the titanium rods and everything. And I remember in the car, like on the way home from the hospital, just the feeling of like any tiny bump in the car, being able to feel that. And like that was like giving me like pain breakthroughs and whatnot, whatever pain that I have. So I remember just like the immediate time, like coming home from the hospital, that I was just in constant pain, like post-op pain. But one of the strange things was I had this small mirror hung in my room that was eye level. And then because they literally straightened me out, like the surgeon had said he had reset my spine back to 0, like immediately post-op. But then, things shifted and settled and whatnot. So I don't remember, I think I gained 1 or 2 inches in height.
Okay.
So I'm like looking at this mirror that I've had hung for a while, and like suddenly I can't see myself in it because it's too low. And I remember like coming home and trying to eat something and trying to put a glass down on the table, and I'm like slamming it because it's as if I grew overnight. Like I can't, my spatial relation was just weird. So I feel like in terms of being a teenager where you already feel like you're like, what is going on with my body? And like feeling, I don't know, like you're still trying to get to know yourself. I felt that just felt cranked up because I felt like I had like a new body yet again. Sort of thing.
How long did it take you to get adjusted to that new body?
That's an interesting question because in some ways I feel like I had the attitude of just like keep moving on with life and just do it because there's no other options. Right. So I feel like a lot of me was just like ignore the emotional component and just get with the program. I mean, like I think from the physical aspect, like within like the few weeks, months, whatever, like I was moving around fine. Okay. But I feel like it kind of just put me in that place more of feeling like out of touch with my physical body. Okay. Do you feel like the emotional space eventually or ever caught up with you? Yes. I would say even just the past few years, like since we've started to work together, and I've told you this story before, that I had a new primary care doctor. and she was asking me about my scoliosis, and she had made a comment to me of like, if you were my daughter, I would tell you to work with either a ballet instructor or a bar instructor or somebody who's like very focused on posture. And that was kind of like her recommendation of, you should be doing more. You can't just be active and be outside and playing sports and whatever to kind of like deal with this. Like you need to have somebody who is more particularly helping you with your posture. Because she was making the point to me of like, the older that you get, like if you're not addressing this, you know, the more problems you're going to have. And that was how I found you, as you know.
Also through a mutual friend, we will add that.
I think I lost the thread of what your original question was there.
The emotional space of, you know, did catch up to you?
Yes. So not only until we had started working together and you weren't like, hey, I'll help you with your physical body, period, the end. You're like, welcome to the scoliosis community and network of all of us who, you know, have gone through a journey, have had a story. And when we had first started working together, I had also started listening to your podcast. So for me, like beginning our work together, it felt like physical and emotional excavation of like figuring what is like this new chapter of facing all of this head on now look like.
And how does that feel for you now?
It still feels like a work in progress, but I would say like, and again, this is 15 years later, right? Which is crazy to say. It still feels like I'm in like a phase of facing this and being in touch with my emotions around it and finding real solutions, like long-term sustainable solutions for myself. But to go for so many years of just feeling like I'm just trying to like chug along and ignore it and accomplish other things outside of this, but now I'm looking at it where I'm like, I have to like work with myself, not ignore myself or whatnot. It's still just been a work in progress.
So does it feel like you're embracing yourself more, no pun intended, than you were? Like with, you know, with your limitations, with the spinal fusion that you have, that you're just like, you're taking it all in and saying, this is who I am. And sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not, but either way, it's okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good way to look at it, because I definitely felt like a rejection of myself of, you know, with having something like scoliosis. I mean, to the degree that I have it, I know other people, this is different, but anybody on the street looking at me, they're not going to be like, you have, you know, something that they consider like atypical or in the realm of like a disability or anything like that. Right. So because I think like I appear as if
you have the best posture.
Right. The best posture ever. I think the fact of like that I appear as if I'm just within the realm of normal, like physically and whatever. That made me feel like, you know, that ties into the component of like, if I ignore it, I can just keep chugging along sort of thing.
But I think when you stop ignoring it, you become that much more empowered, right? You're like, yeah, this is me, you know, screwed up and all, in maybe more ways than one, but like, this is me and I'm a rock star. And you got through it, right? You were diagnosed, you had the surgery, you got through it, and now you're like, you're moving forward. You're always moving forward, but you're accepting of the limitations that you physically have. Doesn't mean that they're mental limitations, but the physical limitations are obviously there. If you could tell your younger self something, what would that be?
I mean, I think in the way that I am in general, where I generally feel impatient and I want things to happen immediately. If I was going to go back and tell my younger self something, it would be face this head on sooner, so I didn't have to deal with kind of the other outcomes of not facing it excuse me, sooner, because I think that was the hardest part of the journey for me, was just coming to the space of being able to be honest with myself and be vulnerable with myself and the other people around me, like in my inner circle. But I don't know, at the same time, like, we can't go back and change the past anyways, so.
We can't, but you've being vulnerable to that acceptance is huge. So if you were to tell that younger self those words, those words will pass on to somebody else who is younger, who is dealing with everything that you're dealing with. And that's why we have the podcast, so that these stories can be shared for people to embrace their limitations. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Well, how is life now? Like, how is life? I mean, we could go on and on and on because we've known each other for so long, but how is life just day to day? Like, what is life like now?
Yeah. And that's a whole question on its own. And we've talked about this, but I'm currently in a space where, okay, I'll say I had an external factor kind of tip the scales for me. I told you so to tell it as how it happened in real time, I had felt like my back pain was getting worse. I had kind of fallen off with working out regularly and doing the things that we've talked about. And so I didn't know if that was part of the factor or if it was just, am I getting older? Like, what is going on here? And I couldn't pin it down, which is what had led me to going to physical therapy, like now in the immediate sense, to have like another outlet, another avenue to look for answers. Long story short on that, it turned out that the new bed that we had gotten was exacerbating my pain. It was too soft and not giving me enough support. But that external factor was what catapulted me into another, seeing another professional, getting more answers, finding a more sustainable solution for myself. So with that, these past few months have been really intense because I was dealing with really high levels of pain and trying to figure it out. But I would say, like, now in the day to day, I'm more so back to my normal operating level before this immediate thing had happened. But now I'm plugged in with this physical therapist, and I told you the other day, like, I can tell I'm actually making progress with him. He's helping me like break up like muscle tension and things in my back and strengthen like certain specific targeted areas. So I think in terms of present day, I'm in probably like the best trajectory I've ever been because I'm not only facing it emotionally, but I'm also reaching out for more tools, more solutions, and feeling more empowered instead of just, this is something that's happening to me and I have to just deal with the symptoms and whatnot as they come, but doing things that are more proactive and in the long term sustainable to take care of my body as I feel.
And you're not also like, you're not pushing it to the side. You're not putting it, like you were saying before, you would just go forward and you pushed it and you blocked it. And now you're opening up and you're like, okay, I can take it all in now. Now I'm in a space where I can take it all in and feel like feeling and seeing the results that are happening.
Right. Exactly. And part of it too, just like to jump off of what you're saying, like making it central to how I exist. Like it's just part of my routine. And it really helps now too, having a supportive partner who understands, and is supportive and able to encourage me in the ways that I know I need it.
Because that's not always the case. Is there we've covered a lot, but is there anything else that you would like to share that we haven't touched on already?
I think that about covers it. I think just for me, like the emotional tie-in to facing the physical stuff. Just want to emphasize that for me, that was huge, and it's possibly something that lies outside of my scoliosis journey, but of just being able to be honest with yourself, being able to be in touch with yourself, like is such a portal into being able to get out of your own way.
I couldn't agree with you more. On that note, I would like to say to Emily, a friend also, thanks for being a guest on the T3 Fit Scoliosis podcast. This is our first time doing it this way in person, so it's new for me as well. If anybody has any questions for Emily, I will share her information. You can find her on Instagram. But Emily, thanks for letting me come to your home. And record this interview and just telling your story on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for hearing.
It's appreciated.